All right, everyone. So it's only 3 days until Election Day in Canada. I'm really looking forward to it. We've had a little bit of movement in the polls. We're going to look at some of the numbers as well. We're going to look at some of the writings that have changed since the last video that I made. But I do want to talk about some other things before we get into that. So first and foremost, as some of you know, I went to Canada last week, picked up a few new books. So I'm going to read those over. So we have one about Diefenbaker and Lester Pearson here. We have, and I've been wanting to read Peter Mansbridge's book that he has and Charlie Angus's book. So I'm going to read those, and in a future video, I'm going to go ahead and give my review of all of these books. So those are coming up in the near future. But as far as the news in the election, the Globe and Mail yesterday dropped an article saying that Pierre Poilievre could lose his riding, that there's some internal polling going on that's showing that he might actually be in trouble, and that possibly they're putting more and more resources in order for him to be reelected. Now, do I think that he has a chance of losing his riding? Not really, but we can see what happens. I think he's probably pretty safe in the riding. The Globe and Mail throwing this out with a lot of anonymous sources makes you kind of wonder how legit the reporting actually is. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's kind of where we are right now. I don't see any indications that this is going to happen, but if somehow Poilievre's riding is lost to the Liberals, or is even a little bit close, I don't see how the Conservatives could actually be able to maintain many of these marginal seats, not just in Ontario, but throughout the country. I find it a little bit dubious. I'm just going to say that. But the article there is in the Globe and Mail. If you want to go ahead and read it, check it out. I highly recommend going to removepaywall.com if you want to read it like I have here. But a lot of the sources are anonymous and insiders who won't go on record. So be prepared to hear about this. So that's the first thing I want to do. So what we do have is we do have some new numbers that came into the polling aggregate. Now, I have added a few new polls since my last video, and we're only going to talk about the changes since that last video. So the polls that have been added was an innovative research poll that is pretty strongly to the Conservatives, also show the Conservatives winning in Ontario, which is very much an outlier, but it is included in here. We also have the update on the Nanos research poll. We also have the liaison tracking poll updated as well. And then there was a YouGov poll that came out. We're going to talk about that a little bit in a few minutes, but that's also brought into the aggregate. So let's go ahead and go through the regions and see what changes have happened since the last time. But before we get into these actual changes in the region, let me go ahead and just talk about the actual numbers as far as seat projections, because we are starting to see the Liberals come down, but we are seeing the Conservatives go up, but it's still a pretty safe position for the Liberals. So right now, the current projection that we're going to look at the map in a few seconds here is that the Liberals are at 186 seats, the Conservatives at 128, the Bloc Québécois at 21, the NDP at 7, and the Green Party at 1. So that would give the Liberals a majority government. However, if we look at the high end and the low end of both of the major parties, we start seeing a little bit of a difference. Right now, according to the projection for the model that I have here on the 11th province, you can see that the low number of seats for the Liberals is 160. That puts them kind of well outside of the range of majority. That would be 12 seats outside of a majority, which would be a minority government. However, the Conservatives do not have enough seats at their best, which you can see here is 149, to overcome a minority Liberal government. So as of right now, it's likely that there will be a majority for the Liberals. It's possible that they could have a minority government as well, but even with those seats at the lowest point, the Conservatives can't overtake. So they need some sort of big change over the next few days to make that the case. And with the NDP being at 10 seats at best, they wouldn't be a political party that would be able to coalition or anything like that with the Liberals. The Liberals still, if they were trying to get something to reach a majority on supply and confidence, it's as of right now, if the Liberals did the worst that they did and the NDP does the best that they can, there still wouldn't be the 172 seats for that. They would really have to do that with the Bloc Québécois. Maybe there's a possibility if you have the NDPs and Greens, if both Green seats go that way, if the Greens have the best that they can do, the NDP does the best they can do, and the Liberals do the worst that they can do, then you might have all three parties in a supply and confidence situation. But those are the extreme situations. But I just want to say those possibilities are out there. These are the numbers for seat projections. Now let's go ahead and look at that map. And we're going to go ahead and start off with the Atlantic provinces. So one of the big changes that we see now is Central Newfoundland. It is now in the conservative column, and it is the #1 competitive ranking in this model, which is really good because the nice thing is when we have the #1 most competitive seat, as of right now, 3 days away from election day, being one of the first seats that we're going to see results coming in for, that's going to give us an idea of where this election is going. There are no other real changes in Labrador and Newfoundland, or I should say Newfoundland and Labrador. I don't know why I put both of those mixed up. But anyways, you can see in the Maritimes here, we can see there really hasn't been any change. So we still have South Shore St. Margaret's, still a possible pickup for the Liberals, but all of these, Cumberland, Colchester, and Miramichi, Grand Lake, all still in the conservative column. Now, if we go ahead and look at Quebec, we really do not see any changes. As I mentioned in the last one, the one riding in the east of Montreal is still staying with the Bloc Québécois. Even with the new polling, we haven't seen many changes. There's really been a solidification of the polling in Quebec. Now, when we go to Ontario, this is where we start seeing some of the changes where the Liberals actually are starting to lose some seats, Conservative gaining a little. But as I mentioned, that Innovative Research poll could be skewing it a little bit, tilting some of these seats over to the Conservatives. But the big thing that you'll notice from the last one is that the Bay of Quinte and Peterborough were both in the last model going to the Liberals. We now have those going back to the Conservatives, which they were just about a week ago or so. So all of these ridings we do see as going to the Conservatives. Now, if we go ahead and look closer to the GTA and to Niagara Falls has not changed. Essentially, the GTA has also not changed. Now, if we look at Hamilton, we do see, and I believe it might have been both the Nanos poll and the Innovative Research poll showing the NDP, well, it was the Innovative Research poll showing the NDP doing a little bit better in Ontario. This is the reason why you see Hamilton Centre and London Fanshawe now going back to the NDP. However, we still have Windsor West, Brian Massey's seat, very, very competitive, but it is going very slightly to the Liberals. So if the NDP have a good night, they should be able to, at minimum, if they have a good night, retain all three of these seats. So that's what you should be looking for. GTA hasn't really seen any change. As I mentioned, the main changes are Bay of Quinte and Peterborough. And the same thing with getting into the rural part of northern Ontario, we're not seeing any changes. Same thing with Manitoba, we're still not seeing many changes. Winnipeg is pretty much the same. The only difference now is that Elmwood Transcona is now in the safe category, but it can very quickly go into the not safe category. This is going to be one of those three-way ridings you'll want to watch. And then Kildon and St. Paul, we've been talking about this since the beginning of this model being a competitive seat. The Conservatives have been, for all intents and purposes, ahead in this seat. Now, if we go to Saskatchewan, there has been no real changes whatsoever. And if we look at Alberta, same thing from the last model, there haven't been any changes. And we can see here Calgary Skyview is now starting to become a tad bit more conservative, and there's been no change in the Edmonton area except for Edmonton Southeast is a pickup. I believe Edmonton Center is still safe, but could get into pickup category. Edmonton Strathcona should be a very safe seat for the NDP. And then we get over to British Columbia, I said it almost again. People have been mentioning that I said the island of Vancouver. Now, I used to live in Montreal, so I'm so used to saying the island of Montreal, but that's the reason why I say the island of Vancouver. Vancouver Island, we aren't seeing many changes according to this model right now. You have the NDP losing Victoria and all of these ridings here. And you also have Elizabeth May losing her riding. Now, again, I mentioned it before and I'll mention it again. With Elizabeth May, you might have a different dynamic. In the last election, she was not the party leader, and the Green Party kind of took some hits in some places. Now that she's kind of co-leader right now, even though she's trying to pass the torch again, that might actually help in this riding. So let's see. Them being out of the debates might have had an impact at all. And if we look in and around Vancouver, we see that there isn't much of a change at all. We still see Jagmeet Singh gonna probably lose his seat, but other people like Peter Julian and others are in a little bit of a pickle here. So there haven't been too many changes. The most changes are going toward the Conservatives, and that's mostly in these writings. Now, I want to say this, it might not seem very, this might sound very obvious, but I do think it needs to be pointed out. In order for the Conservatives to form government, they're going to need to take ridings from the Liberals. Okay, yes, they might get 2 or 3 seats in Quebec from the Bloc Québécois. They might get, and they will get some seats in British Columbia along the coast there from the NDP. Those seats themselves will not be enough to form government. They actually need to dig into the Liberal seats and start plucking some of those. The one problem you see in the GTA here is you just see a lot of these. If we go to Etobicoke, if we go to Mississauga and stuff like that, you're just seeing these seats very, very safe for the Liberals. And going down into Oakville and other places, you're just seeing these seats, even Milton. I mean, when we got everything in Milton pretty much going to the Liberals, as of right now, I mean, Milton East, this used to be one you could pretty much say, it's going to be Conservative. It is a pickup opportunity, but if they can't pick up these other seats, there's no way that they're going to be able to form government. And the problem, as I mentioned just here with Milton East, even though this is a new riding, you are seeing the opposite happen. You're seeing the Liberals picking off more Conservative ridings. So if we go ahead and go to King Vaughan, this is going to be one of those ones that they pick up. So there are other ones where they just really need to start picking apart the Liberals, but the Conservatives are not doing that. Now, the last thing I want to do is I want to go to a YouGov poll. They did an MRN poll where they poll the entire nation. They try to project a seat projection in this, and they do it by each riding. Now, there is kind of an issue here. So as you can see, 6,077 adults were interviewed. If we break that up into all the ridings, that's only about 17 respondents for each riding. That's a pretty small sample size. And you'll see it in here because it does seem a little bit iffy with some of their ridings. Now, overall, they say the Liberals are at 182, the Conservatives 133, Bloc Québécois at 23, NDP at 4, definitely losing that official party status, and the Greens at 1. That's Elizabeth May's riding. So we're going to go ahead and delve into this and show where they see changes being made, because overall, most of it seems as if it should, but there are some that just do not seem right. So over here, as I mentioned, in my model, Central Newfoundland has now gone back to the Conservatives very, very slightly, but they also have Terra Nova and the Peninsulas as going Conservative. This is going to be a competitive riding, but in my model, it has been with the Liberals whole entire time. Now, if you go down here, one thing I think is interesting is they have South Shore St. Margaret's going to the Liberals. It is going to be, I think on election night, this, along with Central Newfoundland, this is going to be the riding that everyone looks at as being close. They have it going to the Liberals, but then if you got Cumberland Colchester and Miramichi Grand Lake, you see that they also have those going to the Conservatives. As far as Quebec is concerned, there aren't too many different changes. There are others, Montmorency, Charlevoix. I think the Conservatives might be ahead in my model on that one now, so that would be one they're saying the Bloc Québécois would hold. But there was one real glaring thing that I saw in this that makes it really, really interesting. And YouGov is saying on the island of Montreal, that the Liberals will sweep every single riding in the Isle of Montreal, which includes Alexander Boulderis's seat. Now, the NDP probably thought they were going to have two very safe seats. Rosemont, this seat right here, and the Edmonton Strathcona seats. In this model, they do have the Edmonton Strathcona seat as safe. We're going to go ahead and go to that. But the fact that they're showing this riding going likely Liberal means the NDP could be in a lot more trouble than we think. Now, this goes back to the caveat I said. We're talking about something that only has a sample size maybe of 17. You're not going to be able to glean much out of those. So we don't know how that would go. But this is where, to me, I'm a little bit suspicious of what is being shown in this poll. Like, 85% of it seems legit, spot on, but the Liberals taking this riding would be a big, big upset, I would say. And we'll come back to this riding in a few, but let's go ahead and go to Ontario. Ontario, pretty much a lot of what we see in Ontario is basically what I have. They do have a few more of the GTA ridings going Conservative, but the two that I find really weird are some that would change from Conservative to Liberals. And that would be this one down here in Brantford and this one up here, Simcoe North. I do not expect either one of these to actually go to the Liberals. And the fact that they actually have both of these as toss-up Liberals kind of surprises me. Again, this could happen on election night. We will see. But we don't know. Another thing I find very interesting is they have Hamilton Center and Windsor West going to the Liberals, but then they have London Fanshawe going towards the NDP. And I don't see how the NDP could win, let's say, London Fanshawe, but then Alexander Boulderis loses his riding in the island of Montreal. This is where things get a little bit iffy. But yeah, to me, this Brantford riding and the Simcoe riding, these should be Conservative ridings. They're not going to go to the Liberals. So that, I think, is a little bit interesting in and of itself. This old one, the old Timmins, James Bay, Charlangus riding, they show it going toward Conservatives. As a matter of fact, yep, the NDP is in there. As I mentioned, that's going to be a three-way race. Now, when it comes to Manitoba, they basically to say the same thing that I have in my model. However, they have Elmwood Transcona as an NDP toss-of. They think that the NDP could lose. As you can see, the numbers there, 34% for the NDP, 31% for the Conservatives, and 30% for the Liberals. I always said that this was going to be a three-way race. And they also have Kildon and St. Paul going toward the Conservatives, but they say very likely so. So I think that's interesting. When it comes to Saskatchewan, there isn't really any change. When it comes to Alberta, it's essentially the same as my model. They recognize that Calgary Skyview is more conservative, and they say that it's likely conservative. The one that's interesting here is Edmonton Southeast, in which they say the Conservatives are leaning. But this will be a very competitive riding. This will be, I think, the most competitive riding that we see in Alberta. Now, if we go finally over to British Columbia, this is another place where I see it a little bit interesting. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in any further. They show Elizabeth May, as I mentioned, holding her riding, but they do show the NDP losing Victoria. They show the NDP getting wiped out in Vancouver, in and around Vancouver, with Conservatives picking up a few seats. My model pretty much says that that these seats are going to be picked up by the Liberals, but it isn't much of a difference. But then you get this riding over here that's a toss-up NDP. Now, my model basically has this as a Conservative seat, a seat going over to the Conservatives. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to look at it. I have this as basically a toss-up, but it could be a three-way race. And I guess my issue with this going to the NDP, again, going to that Rosemont riding in Montreal, I don't see how the NDP can hold on to a riding like this, but then lose that riding in Montreal. And also, you know, lose ridings like Hamilton Center and Windsor West. I don't see how that plays out. So I we do have this map. It is interesting. I think the overall big picture that YouGov has here, um, and I said MRN, I keep on saying that. I don't know why. MRP poll, excuse me. The numbers that we see here are pretty much in line with what I see happening, but you never know. There could be a change. All right. Well, I just saw my lights flicker, so hopefully my power isn't going to go out soon. So I better stop this recording right now. We're only 3 days away. Have a wonderful day wherever it is you are. Look down below. The 11th province is my Substack. We're going to be focusing totally on Canadian politics. Myself and Kartik Krishnaiyer, who you've seen on here before, we're going to be focusing on Canadian politics and doing an American perspective of Canadian politics. So thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. I will see you later. And I will be doing a live stream of the election. Those details coming up soon. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.